Kerry. We welcome now our political panel of Kelly Sadler, Director of Communications at America First Policies and America First Action, a pro-Trump PAC from Washington, and here in New York, Shavar Jeffries, partner at Lowenstein Sadler and president of Democrats for Education Reform. So welcome to both of you. Shavar, let me start with you. As a Democrat, you surely must agree that this is a good thing for the country, for the world, and for President Trump.
It's a great thing for the country. No question about that. Anytime we can take terrorists off the battlefield, make our country safer. It's a good thing politically for President Trump to the extent he's able to show that he's been forceful in terms of the war on terror. Ironically, many of the very intelligence assets that led to this event were the very ones he's pulled out of that part of the world as well, particularly banning the Kurds have been critical in terms of some of the intelligence. So it's a good thing for the country. It's a good thing for President Trump as well. Obviously has bigger problems in terms of the extent to which he tried to basically bribe the Ukrainian president to help him out politically by offering favors in exchange for his support. But in terms of short term, there's absolutely good political benefit.
So, Kelly, you heard that we slipped a little bit into impeachment talk there at the end. But let me get your perspective. Does this, it's good for the country, no question, good for the world, as I said, good for President Trump. Does it affect the impeachment calculus at all?
Well, I mean, I think it throws a curveball into Nancy Pelosi's strategy and the Democrats' strategy. Just last week, they were criticizing his foreign policy, and look what happened. I mean, we took out the #1 leader of ISIS. We've demolished the caliphate there. And you can see that the president did work with the Kurds on the intelligence gathering to do this operation. This operation was 3 times larger than the operation with Osama bin Laden. So I think you have to give the president credit where credit's due, and he authorized this. It was a risk, and it was ultimately successful with absolutely no American lives, put at risk or killed. So I think it's a tremendous success.
So, Kelly, from the president's point of view, is this more important for the House and the Democrats in the House to try to slow them down, or is it more important for the Republican senators who might actually sit as his jury?
Well, I think that this is important because, the president has a day job, and that's being the leader of the free world. And that's precisely what he did this weekend, despite all of the chaos and the impeachment charade that is going on in Congress. I mean, if you look at what Congress has done, they've issued 59 subpoenas. That's 10 more bills than they've passed this year. Are they focused on USMCA? Are they focused on the kitchen table issues that the American public wants them to perform on? No, it's impeachment, impeachment, impeachment. And what this president is doing, he's saying, listen, this is not going to distract me from the work that needs to be done. I can take care of foreign policy, I can take care of domestic policy, and we're moving forward with my agenda. And we're not that concerned with this impeachment charade that's going on Capitol Hill.
Sorry, Shavar, at one point there was a time that the partisanship ended at the nation's borders. That clearly is no longer the case. But in this particular instance, President Trump said, I didn't consult with Democrats in Congress. I consulted with a couple of Republican senators in advance, certainly consulted with the Russians, with the Turks. What does this say about the breakdown in our system of government where he cannot consult with the senior-most people up on Capitol Hill, as has been done in the past?
I think it's very disappointing. I mean, this country is too polarized. I think most Americans are actually much more united than you would think, given what we see in Washington, D.C. I think, sadly, this president has been a part of that. I mean, anytime you ask a foreign power to investigate a domestic political opponent to serve your personal interests, that's introducing a type of partisanship into the conduct of foreign affairs that we simply have not seen. So I think that's very problematic. But I think all people across all sides of the aisle need to figure out ways that we can actually solve the people's problems and try to reduce the amount of partisan.
And Kelly, for whatever reason, let's not blame either side. Maybe both sides deserve blame here. Doesn't it make the United States weaker if we can't work together as Democrats and Republicans when it comes to something that we all agree on, which is taking out of this very evil leader of a terrorist organization?
Yes, and listen, it's not, the president does not need to consult Nancy Pelosi before he does an operation like this. Newt Gingrich was on earlier this morning on one of your competitor networks saying, listen, a lot of these operations went on, and when I was the House Speaker, I was notified after the operation took place. When he said that Adam Schiff, he's not going to consult with Adam Schiff because he's the biggest leaker in Washington, D.C., I think that is true. And this is what the impeachment, this partisan politics has done. It's further divided our country. If you look at, these swing districts, and Nate Cohen at the New York Times and Siena polling, if you look at state polling in these swing districts, they impeachment is underwater by 10 points. If you look at the Marquette poll that came out of Wisconsin, underwater by 7 points. These national, what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now does not reflect the values of the American people.
We're talking with Kelly Sadler in Washington and Shavar Jeffries here in New York. Let's pick up, Shavar, on exactly what Kelly just said, because I have read the same thing. On national polls, there's some growing support for impeachment. Not necessarily conviction, but for impeachment. But if you look at the swing areas, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, that's not true. Does that give you some pause?
It does on the politics. I mean, as you said, national polls, a recent CNN poll says 51% of Americans support impeachment and removal. In many of the swing states, we see the numbers are exactly reversed. But for me, this really shouldn't be a political issue. I mean, it should be a problem for all Americans when the President of the United States asks a foreign government to dig up dirt and investigate a domestic political opponent, regardless of the politics. That is clearly beyond the line of what we should expect from our commander-in-chief. The public resource we use for public interest, not the private political interest of any there are mayors, there are governors, there are local legislators in prison right now for this sort of conduct, and we shouldn't expect less from the president.
So Kelly, finally, it appears at least that the White House is fighting this on process, on saying you cannot go comply with these subpoenas from the House. Thus far, the courts have been pretty quick and pretty decisive in saying no way, no how. They have another one pending right now with Mr. Cooperman. Does the president have a risk here of going to court again and again and again and losing again and again by very clear decisions?
Well, no, and I believe that this is a messaging tactic. Because, look, if you look at the two previous impeachment proceedings, both with Clinton and with Nixon, there was a formal vote that allowed Republicans to have subpoena power and to participate in this process. The president's then chief of counsel was able to go in and question these witnesses. We have not seen that happen at all this time around. It's done behind closed doors. If this is an impeachment process that needs the buy-in of the American public, which it does, everything should be out in the open. You're basically trying to nullify the votes of 63 million people who elected this president by impeachment. Right. So you're going to need to make the case publicly, and so far the Democrats haven't done it. And these selective leaks that are coming out of Adam Schiff's committee, the fact that Republicans can only view the transcripts and then a Democrat has to be basically reading over their shoulder to see what's in them, I think this is it's a lack of due process that we're seeing here.
Okay, Kelly, thank you so much. You get the last word on that. I hope you come back and talk with Shavar again, because I think Shavar might have some different points of view on some of these things. But for the timing, that's Kelly Sadler.